Hello, everyone, and welcome back to part 2 of our Opus 19 From Nightmares set review. I am, of course, lucky to be joined by Mr. Eureka himself, Jared Wallace. Jared, how are you, sir?
I'm good. How about you?
Good. Excited to talk about the Earth cards. There's some real bangers in here and some leaving me scratching my head. So let's just get started. We've got Undead Princess here on the screen. Man... It's kind of your typical Earth combat trick, right? Except she can revive herself from the break zone, which is really cool. I think I would like it if you could do it as a combat trick, but you can only do it on your turn on the main phase, and it's only 2k power. Like, if it was some major swing, maybe, but really 2k, that has to be limited to my turn. Like, because it's the kind of thing you want to do, right? Like, haha, surprise, that blocker is actually 8k or, 10k. So, I mean, I don't know. I always kind of like the Undead Princess cards, but I was disappointed that it wasn't more combat tricky. Although, obviously, the first 4k buff is very, very good.
Yeah. I know a lot of people were excited when they saw this card, and I just kept thinking to myself, like, when was the last time that combat tricks were played in Final Fantasy TCG? It's just really not something we do very often, so I can't imagine actually, like, slotting this into a standard deck. Kind of feels a little bit like maybe Earth 1-drops tend to suffer from Zombie, the TCP monster existing in that element. They kind of don't want to make really, really strong ones. But this one also removes itself from the game, so like it doesn't really work with that and by itself anyways. So yeah, I'm not really hyped for this card. I don't think it's very good. I think if you are looking for a combat trick in Earth, you have like no shortage of great cards to choose from. There's the 1 CP Carbuncle Summon that lets you like cantrip and gives everybody 2k. So yeah. I don't really see myself ever, being really excited to put this onto the board. But it's not bad by any means. I would expect this to see a lot more play in L3 than it does in any other format, and it's probably pretty solid and limited too. But yeah, I'm just not super into it in standard.
Same here, my friend. Next we have Vanille. Get 1 removal on entry, which is fine, I suppose. And then the real thing is the summon taxing. And when I first read it, I was like, wow, do you just pick any summon ever and you just tax them? And I was like, man, old Opus 5 Edward hero, eat your heart out. And I love that guy. I love Silent Verse. Yeah. But then I started thinking about it some more, and actually what you said the other day when we were talking about, I think it was Sarah Mobius and taxing, and you said, I don't think taxing is quite the strategy that people thinks it is. And I was thinking that too, is that, so you have, this thing is completely advertised, you're holding it up on your backup line, and then if they really want that summon, they'll pay the extra 2 if it's going to make that much of a difference. Otherwise, they just won't cast it at all. So I don't know. Just what you said has really kind of got me thinking. Is like, yeah, I still think I prefer Edward's Silent Verse of nope, just outright cancel it, as opposed to this, hey, I could tax you.
Yeah, Earth has a lot of problem keeping their summons up because obviously they don't have like reactivate that comes down for free. So this is a little less potent there than it would be in an element like wind or whatever. The thing that I will say is that tax is a lot better when it comes from a backup than it is from a forward. True. At least. So there is that. It's harder to interact with the card. There's a guarantee that it's going to be on the field for a certain number of turns, but again, you have to leave it up. So yeah, I'm not really sure exactly like how strong the card is. I just think that there's a very low cost, so you're probably going to see it here and there anyways, just whether it's really, really powerful or not. It's just like maybe the best use of the slot that's there. The other thing I'll say is that Earth has other ways of canceling summons as well. There's Lael, there is Mist Dragon and stuff like that. So it is possible we could see, if summon strategies become really, really big and canceling summons is effective, maybe, there's Vanille, and then you tax them, and they pay the 2, and then you cancel the summon, and so you kind of got to exchange your Vanille tax for 2 CP from them, and then you still cancel it anyways, even after they paid. So, again, I don't think this card is, really good, but it's hard to complain about a decent effect on 2 CP backup no matter what it is. So I would expect to see it here and there.
Yeah. Kind of a shame they didn't give it a different name, that you couldn't put this with the other Vanille and do a whole tax thing. But yeah, those directly conflict.
Yeah, I really wanted to make an Earthfire Category 13 deck because there's Amador in there, and Astropedoflorian, which we're going to get to a little bit, is also 13. But there's just not enough backups. And then the Category 13 backup that we did get conflicts with the Fire Vanilla, and it's just like the Fire Vanilla is so good, there's no way you're not going to play it. So it's kind of sad.
So when they had auditions for Black Mages for this next card, you had Vivi there, and then Blaze was there with his fire, and Vincent was just there, hey guys, and they're like, he's like that Steve Buscemi meme. He's like, what's up, my fellow Black Mages? He's getting into Vivi and Blaze's territory. Does Vivi's effect on entry just 5k to anything, no restrictions? Pretty different for Earth. And then damage 3 just has the Blaze effect. Crack him, blast a forward for 7k. Just kind of a nice generically good card. 2 CP that you can break later if you want to. I don't know where he goes, but he's just a solid card. Right. Probably great in draft in L3.
Yeah. Fire would have killed for this card to come to them. They all of their backups that trigger Megisa all have the same names, or they're all really expensive. They would have killed for one more. VV doesn't work because it targets opponents only for that. So yeah, Fire would have killed for this card. In Earth, it's just it's fine. You don't have combo removal, so it's just kind of like a nice little hedge. Hey, maybe I can kill a Porom here and there, kind of thing. So, solid card. Maybe it's just one of in your Earth deck, or maybe it's just relegated to L3, L6 territory. Fantastic and limited. I think basically everybody who played it at pre-release was kind of happy to have this. The damage 3 is very, very strong. I'd expect it to be pretty good in L3 too. There's just a shortage of good backups in those limited formats. So, solid card. Nothing super specific to say about it.
Yeah. Oh, well, we've got something super specific to say about this one. This is Ico. So the first, when the translations came out, I didn't really read them. I was like, I'll just wait till the English ones come out. And then I get a message from Chris Matisky being like, so, man, they're making it easier for me to do loops. And I said, what are you talking about? He said, have you seen this Ico card? What? And he showed it to me, and I've tried it myself. And the loop is even easier now. The Zidane Mill Infinite loop. Ico is just... Especially with the Rydia backup we're going to get to in it, man, it's so easy to just dull. Here comes Valifor. You completely cut that cost out, and then and unfortunately, right now that's all my mind is consumed about is oh my gosh, this makes loop even better and even easier. I don't know. But I mean, I'm sure it's generically good outside of this because Summoner just got so much support this set with my spoiler Garnet, the Rydia. I mean, there's still the Yunas, there's other summoners, there's the Rydia helps you search out other summoners, good gravy. So I wouldn't be surprised to see this also I'm just going to free cast a Mist Dragon, I'm going to free cast a Sildra at the end of your turn by Dullen. Man, the card seems very cracked.
Yeah, I've played a lot of summoners already because that's always been one of my pet decks. You mentioned the loop stuff. It's a fine loop piece. So for the people who know a lot about the loop, this basically takes place of Mira or Larketius. Those used to get back Zoo, and then you'd use Zoo to reactivate everything. But now since you get to cast Velfor for free, that removes 5 costs from the loop, basically. So this just takes the place of that, and you're using Garnet to get it back and Una to reactivate your backups, and you can use the backup Rydia and stuff like that. So there's a lot to do there. Additionally, when you're playing it in that deck, Rydia gets to search for Echo and Valefor, so that's a really, really powerful combo for that deck in particular. However, I don't really think that Loop is that strong in the meta right now. It's just not. It hasn't been for a while now, and while it's definitely not a bad strategy by any means, it's just very difficult to live that long against category 13 decks and stuff it's just been difficult to really to pull that off. So I don't expect this to single-handedly bring back Loop, but this card is good wherever you put it. I've been playing it in Earth Water with summoners, with the new Une and stuff like that, and it's just been a start player there too. You get to play turn 1 Rydia, and then the Rydia can search for a backup if you wanted to, or you can search for Echo and Sildra. So if I open Rydia Una, I'll just play both, and then Rydia will search for Echo and Sildra, and next turn I just discard to play Echo, and I get to cast Sildra for free, and, it just starts getting out of control very, very quickly. And you don't have to cast, really, really big summons. I know people were experimenting with, Phoenix, or, the really big summons. I'm no, you can just cast, a 4 CP summon, it's just pretty good, or... I think the biggest summon that I've been casting with it that I feel really, really good about is just Fenrir. You can just cast Fenrir on... turn 2, you go first, you play 2 backups, your opponent plays Chocobo Sam, adds 5 Chocobo, and then you just discard to play Echo and Fenrir of the Chocobo Sam. It's like
Gross.
it's really hard to It's just it's pretty difficult for a lot of decks that have switched to this whole model of like operating off of very few backups to deal with this card early and whatever summons are coming out of it very early. So just a very, very powerful card. I expect to see lots of this card everywhere for as long as summons are viable, basically. As long as there's something to do with it, some summon that you want to cast over and over again. Just great card.
Good for you, Aiko. Next we have Mr. Graph. Man, I mentioned in our last set review that they seem to value the like break a forward at around 4 CP. Well, this one costs 5, and it has to be Earth exclusive. Like, I like that it's a mono Earth card, but I don't know. I feel like he could have been a little cheaper, especially if it's, if it has to exclusively be paid with Earth. Like, okay, well, that's the downside. So then make him a little cheaper. Like, I think he would have been fine as a 3, at least a 4 bare minimum. But he's a cool card. It's just, I don't know. I feel like we just don't see cards like this much. And it doesn't help that mono Earth doesn't really have like a place.
Yeah, I would be a lot more excited to play this. I don't think it's bad by any means, to be perfectly clear, and I think it's going to be very good. And if there's a mono Earth like L3 deck, L6 deck, it's going to be very good in those formats. 9K is a great stat line there. Just in standard, it's a little slow. This is kind of what I would expect out of a common, 5 CP removal at this point. So it is what it is. I would be more excited to play this in standard if there was like some kind of cost reduction for it that made it 3 or 4. I think that would be like just some like a kind of support backup or something. I'd be a lot more excited to play it. The only thing that I really see going for this in terms of synergy cards is just that there's the Sarah Mobius.
Yeah.
So you can play like mono Earth and then play Sarah Mobius and you reveal all the Mobius cards. And it probably goes in that deck just because it's Mobius and you have to play some amount of Mobius cards. So that's about where I see this one going.
Next we have this is Kafka. Love this mono art. Haven't actually seen this one before. I always love when I get to see the new one. So colorful. This one, people have been hyping me up, and I don't know. I just haven't. One, I haven't seen anyone use it yet. Two, people are, it's free. Well, but it's only free if they control 3 or more. And some board states they'll only control 2. I mean, great if you're going against, again, the 13 deck and they're just trying to kill you down. And then when he dies, you get a summon 4 or less, which sounds awesome, right? Okay, he dies. I can Sildra. I can Mistdragon. I can whatever free. However, that does also make him vulnerable to other Mistdragons or an Ed or something that can target and say, okay, well, I'm going to just go ahead and snipe that thing or whatever. I don't know. I mean, I want to like him because he's an Earth legend and he's Kefka and it's a cool looking card, but I haven't seen anyone use him, so I really don't know what to think of this card.
I think that the card is really, really powerful. I think when it comes down for 0 and it's serving as like a nice little meat shield and you get to cast something from your break some for free, it's obviously like everything's there to make it good. However, every time I've played this, which is admittedly is not that much, but every time it's been used against me, it's just done like next to nothing. It gets bounced by Une, it gets killed for free off of Alexander, and then you get a free summon or whatever. But I still killed it for free, and it just wasn't that good. I haven't seen this card really like live up to the potential that's written on the card. I think if we find a deck and some kind of strategy that works really well with it, the potential is definitely there. I'm just not seeing it right now. I don't think it's just a generic, put it in the deck and see what happens. I think you need to be able to do some kind of combo with it. You need to like sack this off to, I don't know, Magic Pot or something, and get the value out of it like rather immediately. Because you mentioned it works against the 13 deck, but the way that the 13 deck actually works is that you play 2 forwards on turn 1, and then you swing for 4 with the lightning in hand from the next turn. So, like, you don't actually get to play it until you're already 4 damage in. And at that point, it's like, well, is this card really going to be saving you from that deck at this point? It's kind of up in the air. They could always cast Bahamut too, and then it gets removed, and you don't even get that effect. I mean, it's obviously not bad. I think if I was playing Mono Earth, it's hard to say, like, well, this slot would be better used on a different card. But I can't imagine, like, really wanting to play this in other circumstances.
Yeah. Well, and something to note.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was going to say something to note with his cost reduction is technically he can be played anywhere because he's totally free. So, like, I could put him in my Fire Ice category 6 deck, but again, something you said the other day, I don't remember what card it was about, but you were basically saying like, oh, it was the ace. And you said, I don't like a card if I can't even cast it for the first 3 or 4 turns. So like, even though he could be free in another deck, same with you is like, okay, but then what if things are going poorly and I'm stuck with this Kefka I can't use?
Yeah, that's why, I don't know. Like, Alex was saying the same thing, that you can technically play this anywhere. And like, I sympathize with it, but I just don't think that the way that I've seen the card played and the way that it's just played out is just, it's just not particularly worth doing that anywhere, let alone even in the decks where it is on color. I don't think it's been that impressive. So I kind of, I'm a little disappointed about how this is shaping up. I hope that it kind of turns around in the latter half. I would love to be at a stage where I'm like, wow, Kefka is like so strong.
Yeah.
Because then there's actually, like more aggro on the meta and stuff like that. But for now, I'm not super impressed with how the card has been playing.
That's fair. Well, we got another 5-coster. This is Genova Synthesis. I thought this card was wretched when I first saw it. I was like, another board wipe for Earth, and I've got to have 5 backups just to do Hecaton Kyre, a card I can already use without the backups. Yeah. However, I'm just so used to board wipes hitting everything. I then did realize, well, it actually technically only hits your opponent, so it is superior to Hecaton Kyre at that point. At the same time, again, Mono Earth isn't really a thing right now. Maybe if it was, this is good. But it still has so many board wipes. We have Shadow Lord, Titan, Hecaton Kyre, Shantoto. Like, does it need more? Can we get it for another element, please?
Well, I think that this card is, in my mind, it's kind of if you're in Mono Earth, a better version of Titan. Because Titan has been just so expensive recently. Like, just paying 7 to leave a 9k on the board and kill everything, and you kind of wipe your own progress too. I think it's very important for decks in the modern day. Like, if you're going to play a board wipe, I mean, like, Shantoto is always going to clear the board, but it's going to leave you with nothing. And like, it's kind of important at this point that if you're clearing the board, you kind of need to clear just their board, because that's what Luso is doing, right? You kind of have to keep pace with what other decks are doing in terms of board clear. And this is a card at a fair cost that does a pretty good board clear and also leaves you with a really big body here with this 9k and whatever you had before that. So while I agree, like, Mono Earth is really not exciting, if we were playing Mono Earth, I would be excited to put this in the deck for sure.
Good selling point over Titan, and I'm looking forward to the Wind Earth multi-element Luso Synthesis next game or next opus. Next we have, oh boy, Aster Proto-Florian, a card that says pay 3 CP. When you pay 3 CP for this card, activate nothing. It literally doesn't do anything if you pay 3. So you can pay 5 to get a single forward or backup. You can pay 7 to get both. Now, I'm curious to know what you'd be willing to pay. 5 for one of those, I think, is definitely too expensive on both the forward and the backup. 7 for both, though, now I'm a little more interested. The only crummy part is it's not multi-playable, and it just sits there. There's no way to break it. So, like, if you wanted to play multiple, you'd have to find some way to get it off the field to do another one. I really actually do like this guy. He might just be too specific and too expensive, but I actually think he's kind of a neat card. What do you think?
I mostly agree. I think a lot of people like saw this and were like, oh yeah, pack fodder, 0 out of 5, kind of card. And I think, like, when you frame it as like a one-of kill spell that kind of can be particular to, like, just snipe a backup, snipe a forward for 7, that's really not that bad. And the fact that it leaves nothing afterwards it's not a desirable outcome. It's not a lot of things that you will, like, build your deck around, kind of. But I don't think it's really quite as bad as people are saying. I think it's more like a 3 out of 5 card. And then if I was playing monster synergies, like if I'm playing Larkishas, or if I'm playing like Mira and stuff like that, I'm really excited to play this card. I actually think that this card is really, really good in those kinds of situations. I'm not like trying to like Althea and play this card over and over again. I think the place that it sits is more like if you're playing like a kind of like backup hate like strategy, like whether it's like Une or Fenrir's or Hecaton Chair or Mandragora in the case of monsters, if you want to do monster synergy stuff, you might just see one of this guy in the deck because it's just a very solid all-around flexible answer to a lot of different problems that a deck like that might have. So I don't think it's nearly as bad as people have kind of been led to believe that it is. I think it'll actually be quite good in like L3, so we'll have to see.
Yeah, looking to see where he goes. Next, we have Animist. Somebody was really selling me on this when it first came out. Oh my gosh, you just search out a monster for a 1 cost. And that text is very good. I am having trouble, where do I put this guy? Because at first I thought, oh, the Ice Earth control deck, that's great. You want to get Biblos right onto the field. But then I was like, well, wait a minute. That deck's really, like, I need to ramp up backups in that deck. And that's actually usually when I lose, is I can't get to my backups. I was like, I don't think I really want to be cracking a backup. Like, yeah, I can get the Biblos out, but I can also search them out with Nagmalana. So the more I thought about it, the more I was like, it's a cool effect. I just don't know where I would use it necessarily. That being said, his damage 3 is really good, that you could just search out a monster on entry, but as we said with some of the others, I don't know how relevant that's going to be.
Right. Yep, totally agree. I don't think that this one is quite up to standard playability. The biggest thing that I see for this is the L3 potential. There's really not a lot of monster search, but this card it's more in line with the kind of speed that L3 plays at, where you actually still want to play like 17 backups, because you don't have as many backup searchers and they're not as consistent and the game is just not quite as fast. But in that situation, it's searching out Echidna, for example, and just plays it directly to the field. So I think it'll be quite strong in L3. In Standard, it's maybe a tech card that you could see here and there, but I don't really see it sticking around that long.
What about the great Doga? If any of you've listened to any of these, I love a mono art. And this one's unique, I'll give it that, but I also have to admit, I have no idea what I'm looking at here. Like, this is not the mage-looking guy I remember from 3, so whatever. Anyway, another little crystal support. Technically weird, like, I'm guessing they don't really want you to play fire and lightning. I'm assuming they're thinking, well, it's Earth, you always have multi-element access through that, so you pay for it that way. Man, I don't know. I don't know if just Glaciella ruined crystals for me in the sense that, but she just does everything immediately and can kill anything, so why would I want to wait a turn? Don't get me wrong, like, to me, the 7k board wipe, again, just to them, sounds cool, but you have to wait a whole turn. He's just a 5k. He can die so easily. The crystals, like, I do like the idea. I just don't think it's there.
Yeah, I will say that back when crystals were first coming out, like when Robel first came out, I was really excited to play like Robel in Mono Earth at the time, which is monks. And then there just wasn't enough crystals to really play Robel. And this is another way for Mono to produce crystals. So I do think it is kind of like a valuable card to have in the pool. But I don't really expect this card to see a lot of play. It's just really specific. If you have to discard a summon, you can't even discard like a random card. So not really living up to the multi-element Van Doga. So
yeah, nice. I like that. Next we have Noct. So when I first started playing this game, one of the first decks I tried out is when I barely knew anything. It was Yusufer's Scions of the Seventh Dawn, Warriors of Darkness combination deck from Opus 8. Really liked it. They were the same color elements. They played well together. And so ever since then, I've had a soft spot for the Warriors of Darkness. Unfortunately, we didn't get any of the others. We just got Noct. Like, I don't know if they just felt like throwing him out there. Whatever. So he's tied to Warp. Like, I definitely don't want to pay 6 for this, although the burst is nice. 1 is great, but again, then you got to put him in a Warp deck. Like, neat idea, and I do like the art. He just feels very awkward to me.
Yeah, this is one that I kind of have my eye on, I guess. If you're playing a lot of Warp cards, which is something that I expect to do in L3 and L6, then I think this card is very, very good.
Yeah.
However, in Standard, where warping is pretty rare, I don't really have high hopes for this. The effect, if you do warp in and you do get to play for 1, is obviously, very, very strong. I would definitely play it. And if you're going to play warp stuff, then yeah, you just put this card in the deck because it's very, very cost efficient. But the conditions are really high for it, so I just don't think it really has that much of a life in Standard right now. Maybe next set comes around, maybe warping gets really, really strong. Maybe there's some kind of Earth Wind, or each element gets a few more warp cards, and that makes warping a more viable strategy as like an all-in kind of thing. And then this card I could see being pretty good.
Yeah.
With the current pool, I think it's gonna struggle.
Yeah, absolutely. This next card, Barrett. Interesting, his text says when you cast a multi-element card, which means in the future, if they were to ever print multi-element summons or backups or monsters, he would technically trigger off of that. So that's
Yeah.
will that matter? I don't know. I guess we'll have to wait and see. The first and, to be honest, only thing I thought of with this guy is, wow, what a great partner for Riku, right? Because that deck wants to cast a bunch of multi-elements anyway. Can you see another place for him? He seems like he'd be a fun fit there, but I couldn't really think of anything else for him.
Yeah, I was giving it a thought, and if you go and you like look over in the card database or on Index or whatever, if you go look at like all of the multi-elements over the last few sets, there's just like a lot of 7 cards. Like there's Tifa, there's Cloud, there's just all sorts of multi Billy Bob and stuff like that. You know, there's just a ton of them. Sonon. So like I was thinking, maybe there's like an Earth, Lightning, Wind 7 deck. That plays this Barrett, plays Cloud, plays Sid Highwind, Aerith, Billy Bob, and I don't know, other stuff. Like I haven't really gotten around to figuring out whether it's actually a deck or whether it's any good or worth pursuing, but it seems like there's enough synergy cards there that you could make something work. Whether it's more of a standard deck or an L3 deck, I would kind of lean towards the idea that it's probably an L3 deck. The only thing that I'm really sad about there is that when you start playing all these 7 cards, I was looking towards GJ, but then the GJ, the backup searcher that searches GJ is fired, and it just kind of like doesn't really mesh super well in that regard. But Cloud is really powerful. Sid Highwind, when you start going off, is really powerful, and Tifa's really strong in L3. So I could definitely see something happening here using this Barrett as a board wipe. Again, I'm not really sure if it's more of a standard L3 thing quite yet.
Yeah, that's fair. I don't know if you knew this, but wolves, they hate the sun and the moon. They hate the light and the dark. Specifically Fenrir here, because every Fenrir card is always hating on light and dark. I have heard very mixed opinions on this. Some people saying this card's fantastic, especially when you get it for free. Others saying it's too specific, it's terrible. I have to admit the light and the dark text seems to become less relevant with every set, so I feel like that one won't come up very often. However, multi-elements are pretty popular. Granted, 2 of the strongest decks of the last set were mono wind and mono water. No multi-elements there. So, I mean, again, it's one of those cards that, like, I think I'd love it if we had a sideboard. Oh, multi-elements, right? I'll swap them in for game 2. But I don't know. I don't know if I can take the risk on this guy if I'm, like, trying to take him to a tournament. What do you think?
This is kind of the same deal with Alexander, where I kind of thought it was like really too narrow to actually end up seeing play, or maybe seeing play as a one of. And then when I played it, I was surprised. It is a card where it's like it either does something against your opponent's deck or it doesn't, and there's really no in between. But I think that when it does, it's good enough that it would warrant a couple of slots in most Earth decks. I have been pretty impressed with this. Again, I've been playing a lot of Summoners. Garnet triggers both of the free summons there, and this has just been great. As a 0 CP way to kill Une, it has been like really important for me. 0 CP way to kill Barrett, that has come up a couple of times. That was Avalanche is really not happy about this card. I'll tell you what. It's made things really difficult for them. The other big one that I can think of is that we'll get there in the next video, but there's the light Titus that came out, so there is a bit more light and dark running around now than there has been in recent times, because that light Titus is a very powerful card. So I think against most decks it's likely that it hits something, but again, if we go back to where we were last set and there's Leo and mono water and mono wind, well then this card is probably not going to be as powerful. But I don't think that's a problem with the card as much as just like, well, it's just not in the right place for the meta at that point in time.
That's fair. And it could always
I'm pretty sold on it.
Yeah, it could always get stronger in the future too. So all right, now we have the Death Lord. This is a neat little guy. I guess he technically breaks even in the sense that you pay for and break him to get 2 cards back from your break zone. Maybe he works well with the Riku, something that wants to recur a lot of characters. Beyond that, like, it's one of these cards, I like all of his text. I just don't know where I would put him. How do you feel about him?
Right. Yeah, no, that basically sums it up. I think in a standard metagame where you have the entire pool, it's pretty unlikely that you're going to choose this over, Lael, cards like that, that have been historically very powerful. Again, not a bad card by any means. I could see it being used as like a tech slot in, especially like monks and stuff like that, because it's really important to recur your
Yeah.
Ursulas and, the same cards over and over again in those decks, and it deals you a point of damage, which is really, upside in these kinds of decks. Turns on Mira as well, so if there's a monster synergy, I wouldn't be very surprised if this was a one of in there too. But on the whole, I don't think it's really at the same speed that Standard is being played at, so I would be surprised if it made like huge waves there, just more of a tech option. In L3, I expect this to be really good because this is the first character recursion that we've had in like a long time. There's no Kusith there.
Oh, yeah.
It's really difficult to recur characters outside of like Riku, so I really expect this to be quite strong in L3. That's really where I expect to see a lot of it.
That is where Death Lord shall make his appearance, but probably not Behemoth. I don't know. It took me a while to process what this card really did and like the cost and everything.
Yeah.
And now that I'm really thinking about him, I just think we're past the age where monsters, you have to pay an amount to activate them, because we have so many now that just become, for free, activate Atomos, for free, activate, wow, I suddenly lost my monsters. Jin, Biblos, Echidna. Well, it costs you something, but it's going to get it for you right back. So just paying an Earth to just get a 7K guy just seems like very antiquated at this point. And his entry effect is fine, but it's nothing to write home about. So I like the art on this guy, but the more I thought about him, I was like, I don't think this is very good.
Yeah, I feel like they probably designed this card with animate for 0 in mind, and then when they started testing it with Larkishis and Mira and stuff like that in the pool, they were like, maybe that's a bit much, and so they kind of like nerfed it by putting it at 1 Earth. I don't think it's quite as bad as people have been complaining about it. I would be very surprised if this wasn't playable in L3 at some point. But yeah, not a 0 out of 5 card, but more like a 2 out of 5. I'd say it's a lot worse than some of the other animating monsters. So
next we have more monks. Monks have been kind of dead for a while. They didn't ever really get any great support after Sophie. I know Alex complained about him in our End of Opus last video. He's like, you get this cool Prish card, this Legend Prish, and she's a 3 cost, so she can't even come in off the Ursula. So I don't know. Like, it's hard to get excited about a monk like this. Any thoughts?
Yeah, no, not really.
Next, we have a card we have plenty of thoughts on, and it's Rydia. I am not a fan of this art because it looks very grainy. And now I'm hoping, like, if I see it in person, the actual physical cardboard, maybe the foil there looks better. But like the image, it almost looks like there's like a light spot on her. I don't know. Art's not for me. But that effect, oh, you bet your butt, that's for me. I've already seen this used so much. The amount of just like fixing it can do is just kind of nutty. You could put this in Ice Earth. It fetches out your Unalesca, which is like the core card of that deck, and just go ahead and get yourself a summon on top of that. My buddy was saying you can basically use this to become 4 backups, because you use it like you kind of mentioned earlier. You can get whatever you want. Get Unalesca. Oh, I'll go get Sildra as well on top of that, and then Sildra is going to become Princess Sarah, and then that's going to become this or Sarah or whatever. Like, it's just. It's the little bit I've even seen it, there's a part of me that's almost like, oh, man, this card almost seems like obnoxiously good, just the versatility of it, of all the different things I can do. Like, thank God it's named Rydia, because I couldn't imagine playing this with the forward Rydia, but card is probably the hands down best card in Earth. Yeah,
no, totally agree. I think this card is the best card in Earth. It might even be one of the best cards in the set. I think it's up there with like Buddy, as one of the best cards in the set. Sildra is a broken card, and this card says search Sildra, and one way to make Sildra really broken is Yuna, and this card says search Yuna too. So it's really hard to complain about the card. You can't search them both at the same time, so there's that at least. And if you search Garnet, then it counts as both. So like there's problems. It presents interesting deck building problems, but they're not unsolvable by any means. The card is very, very strong. I've had much success searching for Eiko and Sildra, or searching for Yuna or Len. Even I just play 1 Len in the deck just because it's an alternate backup that I can search instead of Una if I already have Una or something. So you can play it on curve on turn. It's fine on turn 1 to just discard 3 and play it. You can play it on curve on turn 2 and it just feels even better. It's a pseudo 1 CP backup. So, I've loved this. Ice Earth finally has a backup searcher searching Unalesca. Again, the Opus 1 Una is like one of the most broken backups in the entire game that isn't a backup searcher, and this card searches for it. So, I think this is 5 out of 5. Amazing card. It lets you play like one of tech summons and you can just bring them to your hand, no problem. So if you were on the fence about Fenrir or like Mist Dragon and stuff like that, you can just put one of them in the deck and then this will search it and then you can recur it however you want. It even has a search target in L3. Len is still in L3, so I'm like, I love this card so much. I feel like it was made for me. I love to play backups. I love to play summoners, so I'm here for it.
Let the grand summoning begin. And while Rydia is taken off with Earth, we're gonna move on to Lightning with everyone's favorite slot machine. I really like, I would never use this in standard, but boy, do I want to see somebody use it. And I like that there's not like a bad effect. I like that you're going to get something out of it off the slot machine. It's really cool art too. It in a way, it's kind of a shame that this art wasn't used for something like more reliable, but I do enjoy funny effects like this, even though again, I will never try this.
Yeah, if there was like a bigger like commander style scene in Final Fantasy, then I could easily see so many people being like, "Oh yeah, I'm playing this card." This is like, it's just screams like party game kind of effects. Where you just want to do it as many times as you can, and everybody's on board for it. So, in terms of competitive Final Fantasy, I don't really think it's got the sauce, but it will be really cool if you play it and when you resolve it. Yeah, for sure.
One of the cards I wouldn't mind losing to, be like, all right, I got Emperor. How cool is that?
Sure, yeah.
Then we have a Blast from the Past. Somehow this seems worse than the Opus 11 Edge because it doesn't have any of its utility, but they like went with the Shuriken theme. It's only 4K power too, and then he has to wait. He has to wait to do something with them. Like, I know it's a common, but I don't know. Come on, couldn't we get a little more than this? This card is a disappointment.
Yeah, when I read the first line of text on here, I was like, oh, are we getting like a little kind of like Vivi from like Opus 2.5, the starter deck one that it like sacks itself to do something like some kind of like way to hold removal on the board? And the answer was just no, it's just a bad card.
Nope, just bad. Next we have Elgo from Final Fantasy Legends. Just generic recursion, get back a multi-element card. It does have a burst that makes me like it a lot more because who doesn't want to get that for free? Yeah, I'm not sure what deck you put this in just because I don't know where lightning goes. Maybe you put it in the Earth Lightning kind of X-Death control-y. Maybe just I feel like it wouldn't really fit in Wind Lightning, but any thoughts where this guy goes?
I don't think this is a card for standard because a lot of these slots are occupied by backups that search backups and those targets in standard. However, in L3, I think that this card is very strong because it has EX, good, recursion, good, and specifically in L3 because there's not as much backup searching backup action, although there is more this set. In general, there's not as much, and so you have room for these kind of high cost utility backups that have EX in like 3-color, 4-color, 5-color decks. And so I think they're in like, for example, if I was going to build the 7 deck with all the multi-elements in L3, then I would be pretty excited to play this there because in general, when you play more colors, it's easier to play high costed stuff than just play low costed stuff.
Yeah. Next, Eldner says, hey, if you pay 7, I'll break a guy. And I'm like, nah, keep on walking, buddy. Maybe it's useful in L3 because it's generic break, but still, like, why 7? Why 7?
I think this one was a limited card, and it probably wasn't really thought much about it after that. It's a common, so in terms of limited removal, it's really quite good. That's about it.
Yeah. Next, we have Kane. Suddenly, Dragoon players are more than happy to go second because on the main phase 2 of your opponent's turn, they're going to back attack in this Kane. Now they're all set up to play Alice on curve. I've actually had a Dragoon player try it, and he said, oh, it feels so good when it happens. And I said, then what happens? Well, I'm still playing Dragoon, so then I just lose anyway. But,
Yeah.
I mean, he's cool. Did it have to be? I did agree with Alex in his review. Like, did this have to be named Kane? Not that there's, like, a standout great Kane in Dragoons, because the wind one forces you into win, and then there's the brain control one. Like, so in a way, maybe it doesn't really conflict name wise, but just damn, man, come on, like you could have picked another name.
Yeah, I think this one could have been. I don't know. What are some other like Dragoon? There's bound to be other Dragoons besides Kane and Ricard, but I can't really think of any off the top of my head. But yeah, it's not changing the dynamic of Dragoons at all, so it's kind of whatever.
Yep. Scholars, the standard unit. I don't really have anything to say about this one.
No, not really.
And then next we have Chimera, which gets its own full art. I need to reread it. Enters the field, choose a character of cost 3 or less. You control, break it. I mean, I thought, oh, well, if we're still playing Rampair, I guess that's kind of good. Is there any prominent cards in the meta that we're trying to break ourselves of our own stuff? I can't think of any. Like, and beyond that, would you want this thing to just have a body? Like, it's a nice 8K and it's cheap, but I don't know. Aren't we doing better stuff in standard? What do you think?
Yeah, I kind of thought that this card was pack filler, like a la Behemoth when I first saw it, and then I came around a little bit more. People noted the Melusine combo where you can like Melusine and steal it, and then play Chimera and sack it off. And that works with Lady Lilith too. So I think a lot of the like stealing and like getting rid of your own stuff and trying to turn it into other resources is an interesting dynamic. In terms of standard, I don't really see it, with one big exception. There's been like a water lightning deck that we saw at like Masters Final, and there were some players like in Australia and stuff playing it before, where you don't play a whole lot of forwards, you play a lot of removal, and you just play all of the monsters. So you can play like Famfrits and like board clears, and that deck was playing like I guess both versions, but in Masters Final there was it was just like 6 lightnings. You played the water lightning, and then you played the water lightning, and you just kind of did chip damage, and then you used the monsters to get there slowly but surely. Blue Worm, Melusine, Echidna, and I think this and Tonberry, which we'll get to later, are more just like monsters that help you get in, like one at a time. So. And I do think that outside of the Melusine combo, Chimera will mostly be the enter the field ability will just be a straight downside. I don't imagine you're going to be like playing Rampair or anything like that for it. However, sometimes you just want to break your lightning in that deck, or like it's because you just want to play another one, or you want to get it out, and you can always do like enter the field, choose my water lightning, and then just use the lightning S on top of it. So it's like you can kind of negate it when it's a downside, and then when it's an upside, you can try to use it to your advantage. Like, kill your 2-drop lightning so you can play a 3-drop lightning, or just so you can play it again from the break zone for free. So, I do think it's a very strange card, and it requires a very, very specific circumstance to really see play. But I do think that there are decks where it is good, and where it is good, just a 1 CP 8K monster that you can turn on and off is very strong. So I do expect to see it in that deck specifically.
Nice. I do love the art, so I hope you're right. I would like to see it pop up somewhere. So the story behind this next card is Kageyama was sitting at his desk. He was writing something. Then one of the employees just kicked the door open. He said, "Hey, I'm making a good Kuja card." And he's like, okay. And they just left. This card's crazy. Like 2 CP backup, which you're happy to play normally. Breaks a 2 cost, which is more and more relevant these days as stuff has gotten cheaper, and on an EX burst, and then it can just break itself to Dulla forward 2, like Opus 11 Crow, eat your heart out. Like, I couldn't believe how much was okay. I was like, okay, but this is a lightning card, right? So where's the downside? Where's the you take 4 points of damage, or like your opponent gets to draw 6 cards? Right. Nope, it's just a solid, great 2 cost backup with an EX burst. Like, damn, he got his good Kuja card.
Yeah, I think this one is really strong. It's really good in general. My only gripe about this card is that it's not optional. So you'll notice that it says when it enters, choose a forward to cost your less and break it. That means if your opponent doesn't have one and you have one, you must break that card. I didn't think a whole lot about it in deck building, but then like I have had it happen like once or twice here or there where I'm like, oh, I like can't play my Kuja because I have to break my own shit, and it's pretty bad when that happens. So I think if you're just playing it as like a situational backup, as like, or like in, for example, I was playing Wind Lightning and I had to like break my own Luso, which isn't a huge deal, but like it was like, well, if I'm only gonna play like a few Lightning backups, and this really the one that I'm going to play if sometimes it's going to work against me, you know? I don't know for sure. So far, I'm on the side of like it's worth the downside, but it has been awkward a few times here and there. And I think, you know, if you're playing, you know, your own aggro deck and they just don't play anything that costs 2 or less, and you're just never going to be able to play this because you're going to have to break your own stuff, and that could be potentially problematic for the card.
Yeah, that's fair. That's good insight. Yeah, don't break your own Laswells, folks. He's too important. Next, we have, could you say this is the most disappointing card of the set, the biggest letdown with this Golbez? Sure. The art is nice, although I actually still think his Opus 13 legend looks a little bit better. I like that one's straight on. Speaking of Opus 13, if you want some Archfiends, you're gonna have to go back in there and get them, because for some reason we got this card of the week like prominent legend and no Archfiends. I cannot believe there's no Archfiends in this. And Archfiends have never had a color fixer. They've always been like awkward to play. I mean, the potential's there, right? Wow, wouldn't that be amazing? I'm playing one Archfiend, 2 Archfiends, 3. You play one every turn and you get to draw a card, and then he comes in and they're all just these massive bodies, but like I know for me, and I know a lot of other people, like the moment we saw, wait, there's no Archfiends in this set? Okay, and they just like didn't even care about this card. Like, ugh, what a letdown.
Yeah, the text on this card is super powerful. You know, you get free cards, you get to draw cards, you know. The body is really nothing to be excited about when it comes in, but it's just, you get to draw so many cards and get to cheat so much CP that you feel like it should be there. But you know, you have to play all these terrible Archfiends. Yeah. They're all really old cards. Like I know Richie Albion from Australia, he was playing a lot of this. And the Golbez, and when you play the Vayne alongside it, because you know it's a warp card, so you have to play Vayne, really powerful. The Archfiends, it's like, all right, Opus 3 Rubikansky is like on the field, 6 CP 9k. Okay. You know, it's like they're quite disappointing. The card itself is still really good. I don't think it warrants the deck building constraints that it has, but it is really cool that they're trying something. I just really hope that we get Archfiends next set, because I really wanted to play this in L3 and it's just not happening. There's no way. There's no Archfiends, so you can't. It's literally just a 4 CP 8k vanilla with Warp 4 that does nothing. So yeah, I'm quite disappointed by this one.
I think we all were. Speaking of disappointment too, Janai, I had a soft spot for the Opus 8 one that like would back attack in first strike, and so you could like pop up to like a 8k 10k. This guy is like, I can't. Okay, if he's already got to wait a whole turn to dull, why does he cost 4 to reactivate? It's almost like, oh, it'll be so cool. He'll do this like, dull, activate, dull, activate, dull. Oh, that is too cool. Okay, but it's going to cost you your entire hand to do it. Like, what?
Yeah.
If this was cheaper, I would actually think this is a neat little trick. Or if he had back attack or something, but he's just like so bleh.
I think they could have given this card haste and could have made the activate for 2, and it still would just be awful, but I was very disappointed because before the set came out, I looked up like all the FFL, like all the arts that we hadn't seen once we started realizing that there's going to be more in there. And I saw this Jinai art, and I was super excited for it. I was like, man, this card is bound to be like super cool. Like ninjas are really coming back. And then I saw the card and it's like, another one bites the dust. You know, it's just real sad.
More like they threw out their back trying to come in off the smoke screen. There we have Mobius. We talked about him with the Dream Stooges. Vivi, man, like why is it? I kind of agree with Alex, where he was like the other Vivi is so good. The Opus, I guess it was 16 one with the black waltzes, and his effect isn't bad. However, I will say this: I have more and more become less interested or enjoying the effects where you have to reveal your hand to your opponent. I think it's easy to underestimate what giving them that information says, that, hey, here's what my entire hand is. Oh, okay, I don't have to worry about Amaterasu. I don't have to worry about XYZ. To me, the only card that I don't care about that with is the Dragoon one, because it's like, yeah, I'm going to play all these this turn anyway, so here, you can look at them. But the other stuff, it's like, I don't really want to show you my hand. Like, I think the card is fine, but also, again, Mono Lightning isn't really a thing, and he has to specifically be Lightning card, so... I guess, I don't know. Am I in the middle on this one? I don't even know how I feel about it overall. What about you?
Yeah, I lean towards liking the effect, but I do agree that revealing is a downside. And I think that the worst thing about the card is you have to play all of these purple cards, and I'm not really into mono purple. But like if this was a fire card, I would be into it. If it was, actually just any other element. I think if it was any other element, I'd be really into it. But just, yeah, I can't do mono purple, and I think this one is, while it's good if you do go there, it's not enough to make me want to play that. So,
yeah,
just a solid middling kind of card.
Who knew that this next card would cause a rulings question? We have Behemoth because it doesn't have the multi-play symbol, so people had to ask because there's Behemoths with the multi-play symbol. We'll go into all that some other time. So you break a 4 to 5 or less on entry. Okay, fine. And then he has the Spectral Keeper effect where he just dulls something every turn, which is cool. Even Spectral Keeper didn't see a ton of play, though. Was that because it was bad or just because Lightning wasn't really relevant? Like, I don't think there's anything bad about this. There's some of the best thing about it, which is the cute Onion Knight just flopped out on the floor. That's... yeah, beautiful, beautiful touch. But am I going to play this thing? I'm probably not, but I bet some people would. What do you think?
Yeah, I don't think we're very tempted to play it. The best thing I can say about this one is just that in L3, Spectral Keeper just fell off, and it was a one of in a lot of different decks. Basically, every Lightning deck had a Spectral Keeper. I could see this, taking place as like a one of removal spell, do the same kind of thing. It seems totally fine there. So yeah, maybe L3 one of.
Next one is Lightning, which is very difficult to evaluate, especially because the starter Lightning came out, and it's like, we clearly use that one with the 13 deck. So where does this one go? Well, not in L3 or Draft, because there's no Odin in this set, and we'll talk about that summon next. Why do they keep doing that? They did that in Opus 10, too. Here's this Lightning, it wants a bunch of Odins. Where are they? Beyond that, I don't know all the 13 cards. I know you're much more of a 13 guy than me. What's the big 6 cost? What am I killing the Lightning to try to cheat in to play with this thing?
Well, I think, especially because this is a Lightning card, it's just another one, or Sid Reigns is the big one. So you get to cheat in the Sid Reigns on your opponent's turn. It kills something. If you're at damage, the next turn when Sid Reigns attacks, he also gets to kill something. So it's not bad. Is it worth like all these slots? I don't know. There's no Odin. So in L3, so like I was super excited to play this in L3, and now I'm just like, oh, it doesn't work. But in standard, I could see, you just play this in, again, like I said, the Water Lightning deck, because you have 6 Lightnings already, or 5 or 6 Lightnings, depending on how many you want to play, and the problem with those ones is that you have to play them onto the field after your opponent has played something. So like the multi-element one needs something to dull in order to draw a card, and then the water one needs your opponent to have 2 or more things so they can actually get a removal. There's not a whole lot of them that you can play to the board, or actually there's none of them that you can play to the board just by itself and just start doing something. So I think this is supposed to be that one. So I think that there might be a Water Lightning deck that again plays the Chimera and like this, and a lot of monsters, and just tries to get like 1 damage every turn, that chip in and kill like that. But it seems pretty specific to that deck. I don't think that any deck is just generically going to be playing this card at this point.
Yeah. So thank goodness we got 2 Lightnings this set, because it'd been so long since we'd gotten one. So I'm glad she'll be up to 4 next set. Next we have, oh boy, this Ramu. So I'm probably going to be harder on this card than it deserves. But I was just, when I saw it, I was just like, why? Like, I genuinely want to know if you set this card next to the Leviathan or the Alexander, and how can you look at those and say, yeah, they're equal. Yeah, the Lightning's on par with them. Like, it's the only one that really has a restriction. I'm assuming their thing was, well, we don't just want to make it generically better than Ifrit, right? Like, fire, that's its thing, is the big burn. So Lightning can't just do more damage. It's got to have a caveat. Would I rather be active than this? I don't know. Maybe that'd been worse. Maybe that'd been bad. It's just the fact that it wasn't Odin and the fact that it has this restriction just made me go, ugh.
Yeah. I'm pretty sad about this one. I was really hoping that we would be able to play like wind, lightning, and then the Alex would hit the 5 or higher, and then the Rama would hit 4 lower. But it only hits 3 lower, so you still have that 4 blind spot that you had before, and it's just like it's not worth playing at that point. Like Cloud is just doing the same thing but better. So I'm not sure if they like tested it and they thought that like it was too good and they had to nerf it. That doesn't really make sense to me, but it's still like a fine lightning summon. You know, there's really again, lightning summons, they kind of suck. It just kind of like ice summons in the same way. They've kind of just sucked for a long time. They have too many conditions on them. This one also has too many conditions, but at least it's free. So I think it goes in like the Fire Lightning 13 deck. I think there's probably some random, you know, lightning decks that'll probably play this card. They're just gonna be really sad that it doesn't hit 4 or lower.
Yeah. Speaking of sad, not with this guy. A Ricard that doesn't just make me want to hurt myself. Amazing. There's really nothing flashy about it, as you would say. It just enters. You're almost guaranteed to draw a lightning card, especially in Dragoons, and then now you got another Dragoon backup. Like, wow, good job, and it's even got a break effect if you need it.
Yep, I think this is just a solid card. It's a solid 3 CP backup in just like any card in any deck that's playing lightning. I think we kind of saw a similar thing with Aphmau. But this one works in a slightly different but more consistent way than Aphmau does, I think. In L3, I would expect to see this in multis because 3 CP backups are significantly better than 1 and 2 CP backups in L3. So I'd expect to see it there, especially. But yeah, just in general, just good card.
Yeah. Then we just have the standard Dragoon. Anything to say about him? Bummer set for lightning. They got some cred cards, so because we're gonna move off to water. Ash, terrible name, even with an EX burst to get just after last set's Ash. The first card I think most people thought of was what's her name, Elise the Ensorcelled, the card that needed something to activate it. I don't know. Some people, I guess, alluded to there's probably some goofy stuff you can do with the bounce back to hand. It is a free Leviathan trigger, but after watching Water blow people apart last set, I was like, I feel like they're not going to struggle with that. So, while it's a neat card, I don't see where this is going to go anywhere.
Yeah, I was kind of thinking about it, and I was like, okay, you could do like Alice, or the bigger one that I was thinking about was like you can do... you can activate your Une and get an extra summon back to your hand or whatever. It's like it's kind of cute, you know. Also, it's a princess, and I believe, I cannot remember the name of it, but there's a 3 CP 7K.
Oh yeah, the
like
Nier
bodyguard
or
from the last
something?
set. Yes,
or Nira.
Who draws a card every time a princess enters the field.
True.
So like that is a combo with this. The combos feel really, really low power level, or like the reward is just so small compared to like how much you have to dedicate. So I could potentially see that being something for like mono water in L3 once the other Ash drops off, but at that point the bodyguard Ash is going to drop too, so it just seems really, really difficult. Also, everything that you can do with that enter the field activate, you can do with Sanctuary Keeper, who is the monster that we're going to get to in a little bit. So it's like, well, after I saw Sanctuary Keeper, I was like, oh, why did they even print Ash? Like, what was the point? Like,
fair question. Maybe we all just need to go out and take a smoke break like this Wool is. I love this art. He does. He looks like he's just sitting there. He's like, he's done a kid's party, so he's just smoking. You can see the Moogle. Oh, I'm going on stage. My turn next. It's a good thing the art is good because the card itself is like, yeah, it can block. Why can this one block? It seems like their thing lately is, nope, can't attack or block, but this guy gets to block. And then he can Chef's Knife to get you with that Toneberry kick. It's a cool little idea. Not going to work in standard. Maybe decent in L3. What do you think?
Yeah, I think Mono Water is kind of struggling for playable forwards in L3, so I could see it working there. In standard, I'm not really sold. I guess you can turn it off with Porum and attack with it. That seems like a really bad use of slots when you could be like anything else with a card in standard, so I'm not really sold there.
This card, Aerith, when I saw the art, I was just like, what did they do to my girl? Oh, they mutilated her. Yeah, not her prettiest look, I'll just say that. That being said, I was going to just dismiss this because, again, I was like, I don't know, light and dark. But I think I saw you using it or someone where it's just like, actually, it's good with the Tidus because I can just go ahead and get it right back. Or maybe Alex mentioned that in his review. So while I don't like the art, maybe that's got a place. I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, I put one of this in my mono water deck because so originally I was going to play, this is a bit of a tangent, but I was going to play Citra with Medine in mono water. And then I was like, well, instead of Citra Medine, I could just like condense those slots into just Tidus, and it just does basically the same thing. And then once I started playing Tidus, I was like, oh, like maybe I should play Aerith so that I can, get the Tidus back when I need to, because I'm not actually going to be removing because it's mono water, and I'm going to use those for like Lena, so. Yeah, just a fine utility backup in that deck. I think it's solid one of. I don't expect people to play like tons of this because I don't think water light is where we want to be. I mean, I know people will try it, but I don't think water light is really where you want to be. But in just mono water, being able to add back. Or in Guardians as well, being able to add back either the 3-drop Tidus or the 4-drop Tidus, just solid options, and I think it's probably pretty good there.
Yeah. Next, we have Mr. Gao. Lovely mono art, man. I love the back attack. I think it's thematically, the way he would leap onto people in the Velt, and he's kind of that blue mage. So I like the back attack, which is nice. It sets him up nicely for his action ability. His body is so tiny, and I'll kind of mention this with the Strago too, like, why do all the 6 characters have to also involve all the other 6 characters? And I get that in that game you had a big ensemble cast, but it's just like, he just feels, I don't know, almost hampered by that. Like, I'd almost preferred if it was just more generic back attack in based on whatever else, you do this little
the number of backups you have or something.
Yeah, something like... And again, kind of my complaints of the Riku. Okay, well then give me a color fixer for 6. I would love to play Fire, Ice, Water 6. Give me something that lets me do that. So, and I'll kind of go into that in Strago too. But like, I do like him, but where does he fit?
Yeah, I mean, Realm. We'll talk about it a little bit more with Realm, but I'm not seeing where the Ice Water 6 deck is really coming in. I've seen a couple people try it and they give up after like 1 or 2 games because it's just Realm is good and the 6 stuff is just not. It's just not really that good. So the tempo, when you get there, and when you don't, you don't. And no one's ever attacking you, so the Gao doesn't actually really feel that good on your opponent's turn. It's just more of like a combat trick kind of thing, and it's very, very awkward. I do think in L3 there's a potential way to play that tricolor because just the power, things are really slow. There's not a whole lot of board clears. So in L3, maybe there's Fire, Ice, Water 6. And there you might play some amount of these, but you also just might not. It's really not that big of a deal there either. So we'll have to see. I don't have really, really huge expectations for this at any point, but if it shows up somewhere, I would be pretty happy because it's a really cool card.
Same. Next is the Clavat standard unit. Anything to say about that?
No.
And then Sapphire Weapon. Man, I was really hoping we would get Diamond Weapon and Ultima Weapon, like put one in each color. And he wants to see 5 weapons, but there's not even 5 unique ones. You just got to see a bunch. Similar to his friend, he then just comes out, doesn't have an entry. Now, when he dies, you get to draw 2, but these weapons just, at least currently, aren't a thing.
Yeah, I kind of hope that, maybe we'll see some, like you said, like Ultimate Weapon or Diamond Weapon in the future, and they're kind of, they'll kind of tie it together maybe a little bit, like maybe it's just like, maybe one of them comes back from the break zone if you send other ones from your deck to the grave or whatever. Then the Sapphire Weapon actually does something, or, maybe one brings them back from the graveyard or whatever, or from the break zone. And then that would be, like some reason to be like playing a discard or putting all the weapons in the break zone turbo, but like right now there's just no payoff. This is not even close to good enough. So
yeah. White Mage backup. Anything to say about this one?
Yeah, just real quick. I think that this one is probably like the best of the cycle for sure. Damage 3 draw 1 is like comparable to reactivate 2 or whatever like the wind one is, but then this one is Also, just a good enabler for Leviathan on your opponent's turn.
Oh,
So
yeah.
this is probably the one that I would expect to see the most play out of the cycle, but we'll have to see.
Yeah. Here we have Strago. Oh my gosh, Jared. I love everything about this card except for one. 3 CP 7K sounds good. EX burst. When he enters or dies, I get to reveal 4 and get any 6 character, not just forward. Bring it home, daddy. Oh, and what's this? A special? And it's just a special, so it works with Edgar? Ah! Except it's water. Oh,
Yeah.
I just, again, why? Why does all that? Couldn't he have just been Strago? Did he have to? He's got to work with the 6 deck. Okay, then give me something for the 6 deck. Like, oh, I was so excited when I read all this text and I started thinking, I was like, well, crap, but how do I get him in there? Like, I can't do that. Ah! Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah. So for Ice Water, which is the only place I could possibly really see this working, is like, you really want to play the Strago backup because it lets you get the Realm back, and then you get to do your Realm things. And like Realm is just so much more powerful of a card than this is. Again, I think this one's relegated to trying to make 3-color 6 work in L3, and I think it has like no hope in Standard, basically.
Yeah. However, as you mentioned him earlier, we do have the Sanctuary Keeper. This is a category 10 monster, so it fits right in with the 10 for the Una numbers, if that's what you're looking for. And any card that triggers on both your and your opponent's turn is always worth a second look. Because you're like, ooh, so I get to just freely attack, and then I get a blocker back as well. Another one that fits with Elysian Sourcewell, like you mentioned. Why did they even print Ash after this thing? I actually really like this guy. He is a water monster, and he doesn't fit anything you want to do in like the water deck compared to the Toneberry or the Blue Worm or the Echidna. Right. So, and he is kind of expensive at 3. But man, I don't know. Maybe I'm just hoping for those old days where combat matters and haha, I get to do stuff on both turns. Like, I like him. Is he going to show up? You tell me.
Yeah, the best use that I saw for this card was just triggering Une, and like basically you just get to add back summon after summon. That was basically all I saw for it. There's also, like Elysian Circle and stuff like that. I would be a lot less surprised if this one was like just one that showed up in L3 where combat matters a little bit more, where the game's a little bit slower and you get more value out of this over time. Than if you were to actually just like try to play this in Standard. But in Standard, you can switch it with Celdra, so maybe there's a case to play one of it in those kinds of decks. But I think it's got an uphill battle either way. Just as a 3CP card that does nothing when it enters, and kind of requires very specific circumstances for you to get value over time.
Yeah. There's Sophia, neat art, but unless you give me a polymerization that I confuse her with Sanctuary Keeper to make Sophia Sanctuary, and I'm gaining power and you're losing power, this just seems like fodder.
Yeah, this one's a limited pack fodder kind of thing. So,
yeah. What about our boy Titus here? I don't ever want to pay 6 for this, but on an EX burst for free, that's good, but that means you do still have to slot it into the deck then, which I can't see myself doing. Do you feel any different?
Yeah, I could have seen playing one of this in like Guardians if there was ever a slot, but after building the Guardians deck with all of the cards that we've seen now, I just don't see it. Also, the other Titus that came out this set is really, really good, and this one is really not. So I think this is more of a title card where you kind of just don't have. There's like literally no downside to playing this in your deck because it's never going to break, and it's EX and you can get it off of the unit damage 5 for free. So you'll probably see at least one of it in 10 title, but I don't think you're ever going to see it anywhere else.
Take it to the title. For anyone who plays Magic the Gathering, there's a really cool keyword in that game called Death Touch, where you'll see these plague rats, a little 1/1 guy, easiest body in the world, right? Except he's got Death Touch, so if you run into him with this big 5/6 character, boom, he kills it anyway. It's so thematic for Tonberry. Immediate comparisons to Blue Worm come up. This one will not die automatically like the Blue Worm will. However, the activation isn't free. You do have to discard a card for it, but they both draw an entry. He's just cool, and I like the idea of, okay, I discard, animate him, and I don't know, isn't it worth it even if they go like, well, I'm going to Brynhilder? It's like, cool, go ahead, waste Brynhilder on my Toneberry, please. Like, I love this guy.
Yeah, I think this is another one of the, Blue Worm series, these kind of difficult to deal with attackers. Again, in the water, like Water Lightning, or maybe, Leo, those kinds of, or maybe just Mono Water too. I could see some amount of these. I don't think this one is quite as good as Blue Worm, in my opinion. It is more repeatable, but also more expensive, and I think the CP is CP is everything in this game, you know. So
Yeah.
I do think that it is a little bit worse than Blue Worm, in my opinion. But I would also, a lot of the times, now is not necessarily that time, but a lot of the times when you're playing a normal game, I would want to play like 4 or 5 Blue Worms. So I'll just let Tomberry overflow into that slot and kind of use them differently if that ends up being the case.
Yeah, absolutely. Here we have Yuna, which is just awful name clash, and like I don't think I would want to play this even if I got to pick for 5, but the fact that they get to pick is like, huh? The only thing I can think is like maybe they designed this as like a Tenzin or a Neo X Death counter. It's like, oh, it's great when they just have this big body, you develop a backup and then they lose that big body, which is like, okay, sure, in that specific situation it's awesome, but I don't think that's gonna come up.
Yep, I think this one was for limited. That's it.
Yep.
But
Next, we have a card I've heard a lot of people excited about, and this is Joseph. But also everyone immediately admits, ooh, but it completely conflicts with the Searcher for Rebels in Fire. Yeah, I do like the text on this card. It's good, but ooh, what a bad name. And man, Rebels just can't seem to catch a break. It's like they keep trying a different idea with them, and nothing's even stuck so far.
yeah, the text is powerful. The name is really awful, and Rebels in general have been fighting an uphill battle since they came out, basically. I don't really expect this to change that in any significant way. I would be surprised if there's not something to do there. I would just be really surprised if it actually, like mattered. I'd be really, really surprised if it was actually like comparatively viable in any way. Really, the only card that deck has that's super powerful is Furion, and it's not enough even with this and Hilda and everything else that's come out to really float the rest of the deck.
Yeah, 2's just not there. Oh, this is a 12 character, so I got to do the compression tinny voice. This is Larsa of House Solidor. Anytime you play 12, they have like this terrible compression on the voice act, and everything sounds like it's being spoken through a tin can. Larsa, I really like this card, especially if Sky Pirates were to ever make a comeback. You now have a Searcher, and it's optional too. So like if you don't need to use it, I kind of like that, similar to the Elf backup that Avalanche has. Nope, I don't need to discard. He's fine. And then a being able to break yourself effect is always welcome too. Is he relevant right now? I don't know, but 12 always seems to come back in some way or another. So it's one to watch for, even if he's not strong right at the moment. And good art.
Yep. I just plopped one of this into mono water. It lets me search Ash. That's just fine, So I put one of it in there. The other thing is that there are potential implications for this searching Vayne in both standard and L3. Vayne's a very powerful card. This card searches it. The other card that searches Vayne is Gramus, so that kind of locks your warp strategies to, if you want to have 6 cards that access Vayne, including Vayne itself. Then you'll have to play either Water Lightning Wind Lightning or Wind Water, and those cards being the searchers for it. It's solid. Is Vayne and Warp good enough to really justify running either of those? We'll see.
Yep. Way back when he was getting his YouTube channel started, there was a rather handsome lad who had an interview with Alex talking about water and bounce and saying, wow, wouldn't it be neat if what if the water summoned, what if you bounced it and then they couldn't play it again for the next turn? Here, what if when you bounce that card, they can't replay it the very next turn? Or
I like that one you just said about not being able to replay the card straight away next turn, because
they made the card. I've actually gotten to see this one tested a little bit, and it's pretty interesting. I've seen a few. I used it against Stooges once. They won all the Stooges on the turn, and I double cast it off of Realm. So I was like, all right, 2 of them back to your hand. You can't use them next turn. Used it against someone who was using the new 4-color wall, and I was like, all right, back to your hand. That's not coming down next turn. Now, granted, I did still go on to lose both of those games, so I don't know how much that matters. It doesn't have an EX burst. But it is a really unique effect, the effect I asked for, so I am grateful for it for that. But man, I feel like those water summon slots are so tight as is. How do you see this card? Because I'm very torn on it.
Yeah, I am mostly the same way. I'm very torn on it. I think it's a lot better in L3 than it is in Standard, and I'll go on to explain that a little bit more.
Sure.
The strength of the card is just everything that you would expect. It's free. when you get to put your opponent's key card back into their hand and they can't cast it the next turn. They can still cheat it in though, which has like some kind of weird implications. So like I had somebody bounce a lightning, and then I just cast Phoenix and got the lightning back from the break zone for free, a different lightning back from the break zone for free. It was like, it doesn't prevent you from playing the card, just from casting it. So sometimes it's enough, sometimes it's not enough. I do think it is generally pretty powerful against aggro strategies. I tend to think it is less powerful against control strategies because just the amount of games that it kind of slows down, gives you a lot of tempo, slows down the game for your opponent in that way, and so it's kind of good when you are the more controlling of the two decks. Now, for downsides, there is the whole, well, it still doesn't kill the card, it only puts it back in the hand. Another thing is that if you have Yuna, this card doesn't actually become free, it becomes cost 1 because Yuna says it can't become 0, and Yuna is like one of the the reasons to play water summons in the first place, so it has some kind of like anti-synergies with Yuna. And like you said, water summon slots are so tight. You have Sildra, you have Kuchlane, you have Atomos, you have Bismarck in some circumstances. There's so many things that you want to fit into those slots, and it's not necessarily true that like this Leviathan is the best use of them at all time. Now, I do think it is better than like the cancel auto ability Leviathan and stuff like that. I do tend to prefer this one, but I'm not convinced that it's as good as, like Kuchlane or Atomos or Sildra yet. So I think it's like in that weird spot of being like the 4th best water summon that we have access to right now. And that kind of makes it difficult to play at any given point in time. Now, in L3, a lot of these problems are mitigated. First of all, you don't have the big pool.
Yeah.
So there's just fewer water summons in the first place. So this one is more of a no-brainer. There's no Yuna, so it always costs 0. You have Garnet to recur it, and Garnet triggers it, so it's just like always on board there. And the game in general is a lot slower, so getting tempo at any given point in time is more important in L3. So I definitely think this card is very, very strong in L3 and a lot more not really totally sure in Standard. The good thing that this, the thing that this really, really has going for it, and I guess in either format, is that Une and Garnet recurring this and supporting the card really, really well means if you can cast it every turn, then you just kind of like keep the card dead in their hand at any given point in time. So that is a really big strength of the card, I think. So.
Is it the prophesized Luso killer? Because some people said that, they're going to go for their Luso Storm, and when they try to bounce it back, you go, haha, Leviathan. Like, I want to believe that, but I don't know. I struggle to see that actually happening.
I've had somebody cast it against my Rosa, and that was a lot more effective. I've not had somebody cast it against my Luso, but I just don't think it works. Like, if you resolve it exactly at that time, fine, but like, they have Altheas, they have Chocobos, they have so many other ways to pick apart your board is really the big one for me. Is like, when was the last time you were playing Water and you're like, I'm really afraid of Luso cast 7 and clearing my board? It's like, no, your board is made so slowly that they're like tearing it apart with, like with Dryads and Typhons and just like nickel and diming you that you're never really scared of the Luso anyways. I don't think this is really the one that's going to change that calculus. I think it's better as just a stun them, quote unquote, for a turn by bouncing the Rosa, and they're not allowed to play it. So it just makes it more difficult for them to cast.
That's fair. Good insight, sir. Let's have a legendary wrap up with our water legend, Refia. I love this art of her checking herself out in the mirror. Man, oh man, Warriors of Light is one of my favorite deck. I absolutely adored the Opus 12 Ferris and everything that enabled. I wasn't as big on the Ferris from last set, and like, I want to believe, I truly want to believe in this card. However, I was a little concerned when it says, hey, we want you to have a lot of Warriors of Light, which is kind of what they've always done. Here, produce a, and that deck is good at that. Hey, here's 5 forwards to deal with. Now you can die. Or the opponent just goes, okay, well, here's the counter, and then I killed you instead. If you can get the draw and the removal, which is great because you put it on top or bottom, you can slap something and then knock it right into damage. I think it's going to be fantastic. Man, I wish we'd gotten a few more backups to use with it, because the more backup Warrior of Lights you have, the easier it would have been. So, like, I got my fingers crossed for her. I hope she does well. because I do want to see that deck come back. But again, it also has color problems and like, what is the right build for it? It does work with the new wall. Just fingers crossed. I'm hoping for Refia, but I'm not sold that it's going to be the thing that I want it to be. What do you think?
Yep, when the card resolves, it's really, really powerful. I think that basically everybody's in agreement about that. The problem is just like, well, there's so many steps to get it online, you know, and like it's so difficult to maintain the kind of board state that Refia requires to really function. Something that I'll say is like the 4-color Warrior of Light, the new wall, the Moogle suit that we got, this Refia, Ferris, those are all just like really, really strong cards for, you know, a 3-4 color Warrior of Light deck. And, you know, they're quite powerful. The problem is just like it has the same kind of issues that it's always had. There's the backup searching is not really quite all there. You know, you have to draw the cards in the right order. You have to just naturally draw the Lunith backup basically, because that's kind of required to get this the Warrior of Light synergy untapped going for the card in the first place. Ferris requires damage 3 to do any searching. Bart's, while it's really powerful, it like requires that you have like it's your only crystal outlet. It has the same problems that it always did. It's just there is a little bit more of a reward for going that deep. So I do think it's probably better, but I would be really surprised if this was like consistently competing with cast strategies or with mono water and stuff like that, especially mono water, because you know they're gonna get you can have your wall, but like you're never gonna be able to kill them. There's just nothing like you just can't. There's no way you're fighting through like 6 ashes in a game and like Porum just like negating Refia before it ever actually does anything, and you know the Kuchulanes and the Atomoses and Leviathan over and over and over again, bouncing the Lunith back up and stuff like that. So I think it's a good step forward. I think what the deck is really missing is some like better ways to get the early tempo. Before that was like what the light Refia was supposed to do, you know, get you the early tempo. And then this card comes along, it's like, well, now we can't really play the light Refia, so it makes things more difficult. And then the other thing is that it needs the promised Ingus backup that we still don't have. I feel like we are like 6 sets overdue on the Ingus backup. It feels like we should have had it forever ago, but we still don't.
Ingus, hello, you're late. It's Opus 19. Where are you?
Yeah, do a mod check on that one real quick. But yeah, so once we get that, you know, maybe I'll be a little more convinced. You know, then we'll actually have an Earth backup that we want to play that isn't Tyro. Then that'll help us play, you know, the Warrior of Light better. It'll help turn on the Refia better. So at that point, I might be a little bit more convinced than I am right now.
Yeah, holding out hope. Folks, that is it for the main 6 elements of Opus 19. We've got one more coming for you. It's those big, juicy multi-element cards, along with a little light and dark and some starter action. So stick around. We'll be back very shortly. Jared, thank you for joining me today, and we will see you in that final video. Take care.
Yep.